What's up, everybody? Hello and welcome into the YouTube channel. I am John Kurtz. Another live show tonight, and our web. I'm seeing your comment right off the bat, John Standard Time. I deserve that one today. I am running a bit on John Standard Time. So anyway, hey, I'm here. That's the important thing. Okay? And I'm here to talk some conference realignment and some college football. As always, we've got some good meat on the bone on both topics. Thanks to a great report on NC State's flip to be in favor of ACC expansion. We got kind of a deep dive on not only getting some insight on how these things go, how somebody is convinced to flip in this process, how the whole process has to go in general of convincing everybody to get on board for a vote, just the entire timeline of events that unfolded between the beginning of August when the Big 12 was in the midst of adding the four corner schools, and then when the ACC actually added Calford plus SMU. So with that, we got one little nugget about a couple of Big 12 schools that may be the apple of the ACC's eye at some point. It was buried deep in the story. This is what I do for you people. I read long articles to find little nuggets of information about the Big 12. But again, one of the schools is very interesting. We found out earlier this week that Kevin Warren's list of expansion candidates last year included two Big 12 schools in Arizona and Kansas. This time around, a couple of different schools associated with the ACC here. So I will get to that. We're also going to talk Big 12 football week 8, man. Is this the week that we are going to get a non-Hail Mary win from one of the new Big 12 schools over one of the old Big 12 schools? We shall find out. I was doing some reading on Heartland College Sports, and I caught a section talking about like, hey, are any of these newbie schools going to make a bowl game? And the outlook was pretty pessimistic there. So, we can get into that. Big 12 basketball media day has been going on right down the street from me at T-Mobile Center here in Kansas City. Brett Yormark spoke about future Big 12 expansion. Brett Yormark says that he is keeping the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City until 2031, much to the chagrin of our Utah brethren. I have not seen a tweet get just demolished and torn apart like the one that we saw from a Utah fan this week, suggesting that the Big 12 tournament should be in Vegas and not Kansas City, which, of course, is an asinine and terrible idea. And it was treated as such by Big 12 Twitter. So many people are learning that lesson throughout the past year or two, that you do not want to mess with Big 12 Twitter. So that's what's on the docket. If we want to get into it, I mean, I'll be honest, I find some of this a little bit boring, but there is a whole bunch of back and forth about what happened with Notre Dame's Jack Swarbrick. He talked about collective bargaining in college athletics, that should be a thing. Basically, you have a lot of athletic directors kind of panicking, a little bit knee-jerky right now, trying to assuage some of their fears and worries about potential court cases coming up against them, not potential, but about court cases that are coming up against them, being the NCAA. How do you combat that? Could you start collective bargaining with athletes? Would that be the thing that fixes it? It is interesting in the big picture aspect of college athletics, but here in season, I'm not sure how much anybody wants to talk about it. We'll see. Kansas, of course, is picked to win the Big 12 in basketball. They're number one in the AP poll. So, if we want to go down the Big 12 hoops road, I am certainly open to that as well. But you guys know you can control the content here on the show tonight. If you have been here before, certainly you know that and are aware. You can do so by clicking the $ below the chat box. That will allow you to attach a donation to your chat, which will pin it in a separate column for me. There are 150 people in here already. I will not be able to keep up with everything happening in the regular chat. So if you want your voice to be heard, you want to be a part of this tonight, click that $ below the chat box to get your question or comment in there. And not only are you letting your voice be heard and controlling where the content is going tonight, but you're also supporting the work that I'm doing to bring you Big 12 content on a week in, week out basis here on this channel, plus all the conference realignment content, even if you are not a Big 12 fan. And I could not do it without all of your support. So I much appreciate that. Maybe I'll just save what I'm going to. I had something I was going to tell you, a little life update there. I may save it, though, until it becomes officially official, but somewhat tied in with all of this. It's John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo as well, if you would like to contribute to the channel as well. Particularly if you're somebody that's not catching this live, you're watching it after the fact, John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo is an easy way to support the channel. But an even easier way that is totally free is just to give me one click. That would be clicking the like button on this video. I would much appreciate that. That is a very easy way to help with the YouTube algorithm. So is leaving a comment in the comment section underneath the video, either during or after, and whether you agree or disagree. All of that really helps as well. Boom to the Sooner. I'm not getting married. No, I'm not getting married. I was gonna say considerably more expensive, but I guess marriage is, pretty expensive too. That 50% thing. That might have something to do with it as well. So I should probably tread lightly on that. No, okay. Let's start with this ACC story, folks. Let's start with this ACC story. Joe, I'll get to your super chat in just a moment. I like it. I like the zeal that you're bringing with the exclamation points there, and it is merited, by the way, absolutely merited. Okay, so reporting comes from some Freedom of Information Act requests where a ton of documents, text messages were obtained here. It's some really good reporting, and it's a very long story by the newspaper in Raleigh. And at the end of the day, we get a lot of insight into how the process went down between the ACC and adding the schools that they did, and beyond that, what some of the reasoning was that pushed NC State to be that deciding vote. Because if you remember, the block that was really stopping this included North Carolina and NC State, and I think most assumed that NC State was just going to do what North Carolina wanted to do. They were vocally against expansion. Florida State was vocally against expansion. Clemson was against expansion. But eventually you had NC State tip, and when they tipped, that became the deciding vote in all of this. So I'm just going to read bits and pieces of the article because, again, it was very, very long. But former NC State Chancellor Randy Woodson and others throughout the ACC administrators in the league office, August was a month of meetings. All right, so they talk a lot about how many meetings there were here. Some of this is just funny to read what some of the correspondence is like. These people are all just humans like us. Like, we put administrators and university presidents on a pedestal sometimes, and they control so much of our happiness with athletics, right? But they are just people like us. So, quote, "Was starting to miss you guys," Jim Ryan, the University of Virginia president, wrote in a text message to Woodson and others on August 22nd, responding to yet another meeting invitation. "So glad we could get together again." All right, so a little sarcasm there. "We're starting to miss you guys. So glad we could get together again." The meeting invites popped up in email inboxes and on virtual calendars with titles like ACC Connect and ACC Discussion and ACC Update. And when the conversation was apparently at its most serious and formal, quote, "a special meeting of the ACC Board of Directors to discuss potential additions to the ACC's membership." We are getting from this reporting, people, the titles of the meetings, like the meeting makers on the Outlook calendar of ACC presidents. What more could you possibly want? What more could you possibly ask of these reporters? It was during a rare lull in conference meetings toward the middle of August when NC State Board of Trustees Chair Ed Weisiger received an impassioned plea from an old friend. It came via a text message, but it was one of those texts that was so long that Weisiger's iPhone opened it in a separate window. It was from Ben Sutton, a prominent Wake Forest alum and booster who founded ISP Sports, which in the 1990s became arguably the most influential college sports media and marketing company in the U.S. In mid-August, with the ACC's expansion talks having stalled, Sutton's text to Weisiger, who again on the board at NC State, Sutton's text to Weisiger arrived in capital letters. "Apologies for the length, but wanted you to have info I shared with multiple presidents and ADs over the past week." The crux of his long message quickly became clear enough. The ACC could no longer wait. Quote, "We've all been watching this movie for 25 years as the ACC consistently waited for others to make the first move. And by the time the league's leaders decided to respond, they were totally reactionary and playing for third and fourth place in a 5-horse race. The ACC has to expand, and now it is entirely about setting yourself up for the next move." To Sutton, the ACC's choices were clear. It could either ultimately get eaten up, as he wrote, or you can play the game. And the game was to be the number 3 conference in terms of revenue output and one of only 3 bona fide financially stable national conferences. I'm going to stop it right there. Now, I get what he's saying, and it was interesting for me to learn that there were a lot of people who really made this plea and push to NC State leaders like, hey, we got to save the conference. Basically, you've got to make sure that the conference is going to remain stable, and the way to do that is to expand. But a lot of talk about being number 3, which should not surprise you. But to frame it as one of only 3 bona fide financially stable national conferences, I'm not sure where exactly they think the ACC is getting to be declared like really financially stable and one of only 3 financially stable conferences. The Pac-12 is gone. The ACC, where is the logic that the ACC would be significantly more financially stable than the Big 12? Where are you getting to? Short of adding Notre Dame or some other big fish that's going to move from one of the big 2 conferences, where are you getting to a point where you're significantly more financially stable than the Big 12? That's just not going to happen, even with the way that they're going to do some revenue sharing and bringing in schools that are not taking any or much of the TV money. That still is not going to add enough for it to be a significant gap between the ACC and the Big 12. So I would just say, in the words of Aerosmith, dream on. But hey, fair enough. Allowing expansion, Sutton argued, would be like buying insurance for future members of the ACC. The ACC contract with ESPN requires 14 full members in the league. If Carolina and Virginia leave by taking Cal and Stanford, you take no haircut. If FSU goes independent, parentheses, they are seriously considering it, SMU could fill the gap. Wow. That I didn't even catch that the first time I read through it. I'm reading it now. So you've got this influential booster who owns a very powerful, or at one point owned a very powerful college sports marketing company, saying if Florida State goes independent, and they are very seriously considering it, SMU could fill the gap. I mean, how about that? Are we really talking about Florida State going independent? I mean, I know Florida State's got some hubris, and they are very brazen, quite brazen and emboldened these days. But man, that seems like another level. Trying to go independent is definitely another level there for the Noles. But hey, I don't know. That is really the first I have heard of it. I've not heard much else chatter about Florida State going down that road. But okay, if 3 schools are going to leave, then you have 3 to backfill. I mean, that was a pretty common line of logic that we saw with this ACC expansion talk, that was a big piece of this. One, they could make a little bit extra money by bringing in the schools and them not taking, in SMU's case, any share of the media rights money, or in Cal and Stanford's case, a limited cut back share. But this is where it really gets interesting, man. Where it really gets interesting is it says in the long term, Sutton envisioned a time after the Big 12's television rights deal expires in 6 years when the ACC could target TCU and West Virginia. Do that, his message went, and it ensures the ACC exists until such time as a top-down solution comes in college football. Parentheses, it surely will in the next 3 to 10 years, whereby the top 24 to 36 teams form their own alliance and everyone else scrambles to develop the next level. So his pitch is basically the same as like the pitch that I have been making for the Big 12 here for a long time. Position yourself as number 3, be ready and waiting. And whenever the big change happens, you'll still be decently positioned. But I don't know. This reads to me like the assumption would be there if it's 36 teams, like most teams in the ACC are going to be okay. I'm also not really totally sure, and it's nothing against TCU and West Virginia. I'm not really sure where TCU and West Virginia come in all of this. West Virginia at least makes the sense geographically, and there's always been some level of flirtation there. But you're going to get them to leave, I guess, is the thought at the end of the Big 12's TV deal. You would be able to poach TCU and West Virginia. West Virginia, I guess if they're disenchanted with the geographical challenges of the league at that point, maybe there would be some interest there. But TCU, I don't know. You know, I mean, TCU has now been thrown in little articles or potential lists for expansion for, I mean, the Pac-12. We saw that reporting from Mac Engel over a year ago, where he said that like TCU and Houston were seriously considered by the Pac-12. And this was before even USC and UCLA had left. There was TCU being thrown about on an in-depth Big Ten expansion list at one point in time. I want to say that was a Dennis Dodd report like over a year ago, but I forget exactly which media member that was. So you've also got that, and now we're sitting here with the ACC, somebody making the pitch that, hey, we need to go out there and get West Virginia and TCU. Once again, nothing against West Virginia and TCU, but pulling basically anybody from the Big 12, I'm not sure how that's making you significantly more financially viable or stable, in his words, as the definitive de facto number 3 conference in America. But hey, suit yourself. I do not understand why TCU would ever leave in that scenario, especially after, I mean, TCU has been the target of SMU, right? SMU has been needling TCU ever since they officially announced that they were joining the ACC, and has been saying like, hey, we're the only team in a Power 3 conference in the DFW metro area, which of course is another asinine statement, but they've been going after TCU, trying to needle them with that. And so TCU at the end of 6 years or whatever in this new look Big 12, they're just going to say, hey, you know what? We'll throw up our arms. We're going to go follow SMU. We're going to go follow SMU to the ACC. I don't see how that is happening. And I know that it's not quite as much about media markets as it used to, but that would literally be just replicating another media market for the ACC. I don't know. So much of that screams that it doesn't make sense. But TCU, I understand why they get kind of thrown onto the back end of some of these expansion targets for different conferences, because you are getting into the state of Texas and you're getting into the biggest metro in the state of Texas with DFW. So it makes pretty simple sense from there. And TCU has obviously been a football program that has had plenty of really high highs and had success. And even though some of the shine wore off in that national championship game, they did just play for a national title last year. But it doesn't. I am struggling to find the scenario where that would make any sort of sense for them to actually leave. So I'm not quite there. But anyway, a very interesting nugget nonetheless. And you wonder how much that really got through, because eventually NC State did flip, right? And so this is one of the pleas of like, hey, this is why we should do this. An influential person in ACC circles is saying this is why you should go do this. Is that still sitting in the back of the ACC's mind? I don't know. Is it still sitting in the back of NC State's mind? I don't know, but it's worth bringing up because it was found in correspondence through all of this reporting between people who were involved in these decisions in the ACC. Sutton, throughout the past several decades, has often successfully envisioned the direction of major college athletics. So, okay, this next paragraph is talking about this guy who made the pitch and said, hey, eventually we could go get West Virginia and TCU. Says Sutton, throughout the past several decades, has often successfully envisioned the direction of major college athletics. He founded ISP Sports at the right time in the early 90s, when media rights deals first began to create the kind of unimaginable wealth that has defined and shaped the industry since. He sold ISP to IMG College in 2010, and then guided the sale of that division of IMG for $2.4 billion in 2014. About an hour and a half after Sutton's text. So the text that contained all of that information that I just gave you about TCU and West Virginia, about an hour and a half after Sutton's text, Weisiger responded with a thanks. Consistent with our conversation last week, he wrote, good points and reasonable. Not sure we're dealing with some provincial viewpoints. Still working it. The next morning, after spending a night with all the arguments in favor of expansion, Weisiger texted Woodson, I had an additional thought about this ACC situation. No urgency. As late in the month as August 19th, NC State Chancellor Randy Woodson expressed doubt that expansion was the right move for the ACC or NC State. He shared his skepticism in an email exchange with Lou Bissett, an Asheville lawyer who earned his graduate degree from Wake Forest. Bissett, a former Asheville mayor who also served as chairman of the UNC System Board of Governors, contacted Woodson several times, at one point urging him to please save the ACC. So here's another guy that's making pleas to NC State, basically, is what's happening here. Another influential figure. I would just distill it down to another influential figure in ACC circles trying to get NC State to, quote unquote, save the ACC by voting for expansion. Says, quote, I am still hoping that Boo will come to his senses and help preserve the ACC. How does it help NC State and the state of North Carolina to lose the Atlantic Coast Conference, whose epicenter is in our state, and allow the future of college athletics in North Carolina to be decided in the Midwest and or Deep South? The Big Four needs to take a leadership role in preserving the ACC by approving the proposed expansion. North Carolina State needs to lead in that effort. Woodson replied quickly, I appreciate your input. I can assure you NC State and North Carolina are pushing very hard to preserve the ACC. Expanding to the West Coast with only two teams is a real stretch in terms of preserving the conference and providing a great academic and educational experience for our student athletes. So initially pretty dismissive here. That's the way that I think you need to take it there. That's a pretty dismissive response about the situation. Key here, though, is just adding Cal and Stanford at that point in time. Just talking about Cal and Stanford because he's talking about West Coast teams. So, lost my place here. I apologize. Bissett emailed again, reaffirming his argument, writing that UNC would be fine no matter what happened. But with all due respect to the Pac, you may have a little more of a problem if the ACC collapses. He closed his email with, please keep an open mind. I will now leave you alone for a while. So less than 2 weeks later, things start to flip as all of a sudden Woodson voted in favor of this West Coast expansion in the ACC, deferring questions to the league office. But he did say after a Centennial Authority meeting that the deal surrounding expansion changed, and thus so did NC State's outlook on it, which you could read into that. Basically, NC State changed because they found out SMU was coming. They found out SMU was coming with forfeiting all media revenue for 7 years, and they found out that Cal and Stanford would take a bit of a pay cut as well. Woodson responded to some of the emails by copying and pasting the talking points the ACC had provided earlier that morning. So he was getting, this talks about the chancellor at NC State getting just pounded with emails from people, some completely agreeing with him, some completely disagreeing with him. It went through a bunch of different responses that were pretty hilarious, honestly, what you would expect from fans. Either, hey, I'm so proud to be an alum, you saved the conference, or you have blood on your hands. I can't believe this. I am embarrassed to be an alum of this university. And so he was just sending back talking points that the ACC had provided as a response there. It says when a member of his staff shared an ESPN story that characterized Woodson as having flipped, he rejected the use of that word. I didn't flip, he wrote, as there was no vote before. The final vote was on a deal that was very different from the one originally presented, with NC State's concerns having been addressed. Woodson hadn't detailed what those concerns were or how they were addressed. Documents in the record, meanwhile, show that he was skeptical of expansion, and then he wasn't. But I think we got some real insight on what happened with NC State here from the Board of Trustees chair, who said he declined to address specifics about the finances of the deal, but emphasized that SMU didn't become a serious expansion candidate until after the initial talks began. And that Cal and Stanford made concessions later in the process that allowed the ACC's existing members to benefit more from expansion than they would have otherwise. So I think all of this communication really does pretty much boil down to that. It was dollars and cents combined with probably a little bit of a nudge on the backfill element of this in the ACC for NC State. But it's pretty fascinating to see how all of that unfolded, and the fact that you had a chancellor that was pretty hesitant less than 2 weeks before it actually all turned, and the tide really turned on this. And as we remember back in real time to how quickly that seemed to happen, that seems about right. That eventually they got that message across, and NC State acted by itself instead of just going along with North Carolina, which is what most assumed would actually happen. Now, there was even speculation at the end of this article, if you want to get into it even more, that NC State perhaps was given assurances that they would get some help from folks to get them into the AAU, of course, which is what you would use to tout yourself as prestigious academically. Big Ten schools, famously, almost all of them are in the AAU. I believe Nebraska is the only one that is not an AAU school anymore. So the article does say, hey, that was kind of a rumor, but it was denied on the record by NC State. It says, though, if that's true, if NC State wasn't compelled to vote yes in hopes of AAU membership, then the next most likely explanation is that it came to believe supporting expansion afforded the best chance at long-term stability and growth. Stability, at least, is an increasingly valuable commodity in a major college athletics landscape that grows more volatile all the time. Yeah, and that is certainly still up for debate as to whether or not that made the ACC legitimately more stable or not, but is apparently what NC State believed in some form or fashion at the end of the day. Another part of being a little bit more stable, having a little bit more money, and if you're adding a bit more money to the pot, that can help increase the stability too. So I think that all kind of plays in there. Nothing terribly earth-shattering other than you have influential folks in ACC circles thinking about TCU and West Virginia. Boy, would love to know the Horned Frogs' reaction to that. It seems like West Virginia fans, you can let me know, but it seemed like last week kind of discussed this, which it has been a little while, but West Virginia fans seemed very against the idea of the ACC, like almost like, hey, you had your chance sort of a thing. I'm sure there are still those that geographically would appreciate it, and some of the more regional rivalries that would come up would appreciate it. But most of the sentiment I seem to get from West Virginia fans there for a while was just, hey, this is not our deal. We wanted that at one point in time, but not anymore. Not anymore. So we'll see. But let me know what you think, West Virginia fans. Joe wants to talk about some of what Brett Yormark had to say at Big 12 basketball media days this week. And I appreciate it, Joe. Thank you for your support of the channel. Joe says Vegas isn't even in the conference footprint. No, it is not. I'm not a Vegas guy at all. So Vegas does absolutely nothing for me, but apparently does something for Utah fans who have played in the Pac-12 championship game in football in Vegas. And we had this tweet that really set Big 12 Twitter ablaze this week. It was from Glass Half Ute. Glass Half Ute says Brett Yormark is in the process of making his first mistake as Big 12 commissioner. I haven't been to Kansas City yet, but in no world is that a more appealing destination for a conference tournament that spans several days than Las Vegas. With the Pac-12 gone, Vegas is open. Okay, well, Vegas is open. And by the way, this was in response to Yormark saying that Kansas City would keep the basketball tournament through 2031, which is a great thing. It's a great thing, particularly for anybody who's ever been to the Big 12 basketball tournament. Which is one of the biggest points of contention I would have here. Like, if you haven't been, you cannot be dismissive of this thing in Kansas City, and maybe pay a little bit of respect, pay a little bit of heed to the group of people that have actually been there over and over again, continuously say that it is great. I mean, even if you are a fan of some other school in the league and is like, hey man, Kansas has this unfair advantage, Iowa State has this unfair advantage, most begrudgingly also will give you, but it is great. Like, the city's on fire, completely supports it. There's a great area around the arena for everybody to hang out and party. And it just turns into that, like a 3 or 4 day party with everybody spilling back and forth between Power and Light and T-Mobile Center. It's great. Kansas City is a college sports city. Everybody supports it. It is a big deal in the town. It's not going to mean anything to Vegas. The atmosphere would be very dull. Like, who's traveling to that? You're going to eliminate the mass of Kansas, Iowa State, and K-State fans that would travel there. Yeah, maybe there would be a bigger contingent like the first year or two, but if you're doing that long term, some of the novelty of it would wear off. I mean, that would really be my concern. Like, it might be, there would be elements of it that would be cool for a year, but then it would wear off. There's no novelty. People aren't going to be traveling as much. Utah, let's be honest. I mean, the hell do we think Utah is doing in the Big 12 tournament? They're going to be one and done. And so even if Utah fans were to decide to show up, like, there won't be that many people. BYU fans, I'm sure, would show up. I'm sure there would be a lot of BYU fans there. But again, I mean, like, how long is BYU sticking around the Big 12 tournament there? It would get very stale and dull, I think, atmospherically, very quickly. We've seen it happen in Dallas, and I did see someone throw out Dallas at one point in time this week. And it's like, look, we've tried that, guys. That was not any fun. Nobody really enjoyed Dallas or came out to it or made it any sort of that was, speaking of sterile, incredibly sterile. We don't need to be doing that again. This is still American Airlines Arena. We don't need to do that for the Big 12 tournament. Kansas City is where it belongs. Even Brett Yormark is doing this after having been here last year when there were a lot of rumors that he was not going to want to keep it there, that he was not really like a big fan of that. Apparently, Brett Yormark has seen enough to be content with having it through 2031 in that city. So I would side with him. That's a guy that not only is he somebody that I trust, but he's somebody that is very much like East Coast oriented. I'm sure would love to have it like at Barclays or the Garden, somewhere back east. And he has decided, no, Kansas City's got this thing right. We should keep this here, because not only is it tradition and traditionally something that's worked very well, but it's something that helps the brand of the conference. We know that Brett Yormark is about brand over anything else, and he seems to think that it's better for the branding of the conference to have it there than go to Vegas. I don't know, man. Not a gambling guy at all. Casinos do virtually nothing for me. So Vegas, I'm going to Vegas this weekend for a music festival. I'm super stoked about the music festival. I don't really give a rip about doing much else around Vegas at all. So I understand that I'm going to be a little bit biased against it because of that. But I think if you're looking for a bunch of reasons to do things outside of the basketball and the basketball tournament, then that probably indicates your basketball team isn't very good. And if your basketball team is good, you care about the tournament and you want to see it in the best place possible where the environments are going to be as great as possible. I for those of you that listened to the 365 interview earlier, when they asked me about it, I was like, it kind of reminds me of like just the discussion that was happening a lot when it was, the Big 12 was Truck Stopville, USA, and so many people were making those sorts of comments. It's like, look, the appeal of college athletics is centered around these college towns. Like that's what makes college sports cool is you have these college towns where it's the only show in town. It's what the entire city, town, whatever is engineered around. And that's what creates these really cool, unique environments across the country. And that's frankly, that's why we should just keep doing it that way. Base things around those college towns as opposed to, places in bigger metros. People don't care as much. It doesn't have the same sort of like intimate, cool feel with the different idiosyncrasies of each school. We love college athletics because of college towns. So it drives me nuts that small towns take as much crap as they do. Not just in this conference, but like anywhere, because the college town experience that's why we're here, man. That's why we're here. Our web, I should have done your comment here first. I thought you would find this article juicy. Yes. Credit to our web. Our web is the one who showed me the article with the nugget about TCU and West Virginia there in all of that NC State reporting. So you guys have our web to thank, man. I say it all the time. He keeps me and us, really just anybody in this space, on our toes. So shout out to my guy, our web. Shout out to my guy, our web, for that. If you want to be like our web and join the chat tonight, click the $ below that chat box. That is how you can attach a donation to your chat, make it a super chat, and that will get you on the show tonight. Get your voice heard, control where the content is going, and support the work that I'm doing to bring you Big 12 content and conference realignment content on a week in, week out basis. Could not do it without all of your help. A totally free way to support the channel as well is just to click that like button. I would much appreciate that as well. Click that like button, leave a comment underneath the video in the comment section. That stuff really helps too, whether you agree or disagree. All of that is great. I would much, much, much appreciate you doing that as well. I think now we transition into Big 12 football. A couple of interesting things here. One, Kelly Ford, this would be like analytics, computer numbers, computer rankings, but one of my favorites and very, very interesting. Now you guys will roll your eyes when I say one of my favorites with the nugget that I'm about to give you from him. But it was doing Big 12 title game chances, evaluating it after last week. And I found this interesting because the discussion that we had on Sunday was very much based around like, hey, who the hell is the third best team in the league? Assuming that you've got Texas, Oklahoma 1-2, which I think pretty much everybody does. Like, who is the next best team in this league? There's a really healthy discussion. And I don't know that I would feel confident placing anybody there right now. K-State looks revitalized with Avery Johnson after the 5 rushing touchdown performance in Lubbock, but he still is a true freshman. Is that somebody that I feel no matter how talented, do I feel confident in saying like, hey, the true freshman is going to be able to get this team to a Big 12 championship game or be the third best team in the conference? That still is a difficult one for me. Kansas, speaking of quarterbacks, I mean, we don't know what's going on with Jalen Daniels exactly. Jason Bean has it for about 3 quarters. And when it comes down to crunch time, it seems like he is always making the play to lose the game. So it's hard to feel great about Kansas stringing together enough with a tough schedule, by the way, to really be considered like the third best team in the league. Oklahoma State has played phenomenal football the last 2 weeks, but it is hard to wash that entire taste out of your mouth from what they were at the beginning of the year. Obviously, South Alabama game being the highlight of all of that. Iowa State, nice story. I don't believe in them being a high-level team in the Big 12. I think they're a bowl team. I think it's, again, a nice story. Matt Campbell's done a good job. I don't think that's an 8 or a 9-win team. And same story with West Virginia. I think West Virginia and Iowa State are very, very similar like that. A couple of really good stories that probably don't have staying power up near the top of the league standings throughout the rest of the year. And because of all that. Like, and then, I mean, TCU, I guess after their performance last week, maybe you believe in TCU enough with still just one conference loss to work its way back into the picture. But all those teams, like I can argue against virtually all those teams, and it seems like there are compelling-ish cases for some. I would still say like eye test, Kansas at times to me has looked like the best out of that group. But eye test the last 2 weeks, Oklahoma State looks like the best, and they've got Gundy. I can go down the line and make an argument too for each school. But yet Kelly Ford has K-State as the only school with a double-digit % chance to make the Big 12 title game outside of Texas and Oklahoma. So basically, this is one computer system that's saying K-State has a 23% chance, according to Kelly Ford, to make the Big 12 championship game. Next closest, you've got West Virginia and Iowa State tied at 6%. 6% for West Virginia, 6% for Iowa State, 2% for Oklahoma State, and then Tech and TCU are actually listed next ahead of Kansas, but all three are at less than 1%. Less than 1% to make the Big 12 championship game. So Kelly Ford not putting much stock in anybody other than Texas, Oklahoma, or K-State, which would basically mean we're kind of like right back where we started at the beginning of the year. As much as happened and as much as it seems like 3 through about 11 or 12 in the conference, there's not much separation between any of those teams. According to these numbers, it actually is fairly cut and dried. The other thing I found interesting as a K-State fan is that it had TCU as the second most difficult game on the schedule left. Wildcats playing TCU at home this week. Second most difficult game on the schedule left there behind the road trip to Texas. So interesting to note there. I would have thought for sure that would be the game at Kansas, but clearly Kelly Ford not quite as high on Kansas as I am. Another thing I found very interesting on the Big 12 football front this week, I'm reading Heartland College Sports, and they have a nice little blurb here about the 4 newcomers with a bold prediction that the 4 newcomers will miss out on the bowl season. Now, I don't know that I'm 100% ready to go all the way there, but I did want to read one of the bullet points into that argument here. It is not just that the newcomers have a combined record of 1-9. 1-9, people. Newcomers have a combined record of 1-9 against the existing Big 12 programs. In those 10 total matchups, the average score has been rounding up, 38-22. No, 39-22. I'm sorry. 39-22. So the average margin of defeat, if you're using the decimal points, 16.3 points per game. I was basically going to say like 17. You're talking about 2 touchdowns and a field goal difference on average in those games, that's an eye-popping number. That makes it seem even significant. I would say significantly worse than it did just seeing that number of 1-9, because I thought in my head, like, well, obviously the one win is on a Hail Mary. That was a close game. So I'm like thinking in my mind, like, yeah, these games are fairly close, right? Like, no, they really have not been. UCF got blown out by K-State and Kansas. Baylor game was close, but just a devastating, backbreaking loss. Houston took it on the chin a couple of times before they actually got to, when it was TCU and Texas Tech, before they actually got to West Virginia to pick up their win. So, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Stands to reason, I guess, when you start working your way through it backwards. But, yeah, man, I mean, that's tough sledding. That's tough sledding. It just emphasizes, again, how difficult it has been, how much of a learning curve there has been. And this week, we have some more opportunities. That was one of the things I wanted to talk about with like this week's slate of action in Big 12 football. BYU has a chance against Texas Tech. That's only a 3-point spread. Cincinnati's actually a 3.5-point favorite against Baylor. Then you've got really tough tests for UCF and Houston because they've got to play Texas and Oklahoma. Texas is a 23.5-point road favorite at Houston. Oklahoma favored by 19 at home against UCF. This is the chance. Like for Cincinnati and BYU, these are games that are pretty gettable. You're at home in both cases, hosting beleaguered, beat up teams from the old guard. One of those two needs to win one of these games, man. I mean, I guess who am I to be issuing challenges to all of these guys? But somebody needs to win one of those games. Baylor and Cincinnati. It's hard for me to pick Baylor to legitimately win one of these games, but I did see them put together that wild comeback at UCF, and Cincinnati just is not playing good football right now, man. Emory Jones ain't it. Especially you look at like what Louisville's doing last week, notwithstanding, but they're having a great season after ditching Scott Satterfield. I don't mean to bum you out too much, Cincinnati fans, but That's a hard one for me. That is a hard one for me to be picking Cincinnati to beat anybody. But again, they are 3.5-point favorites there. I would probably lean Baylor on the money line. BYU and Tech, it's like, all right, who still has it? Who still cares? And who wants to make the most of their season here? Texas Tech, quarterback injuries. Baron Morton gets knocked out of the K-State game. How healthy is he? It sounded like it was an AC joint. That is the injury that's going on there, which would be a shoulder injury. Not an easy one to play through as a quarterback, especially if you're going to be running the ball, which he definitely does use his athleticism for that. And BYU just got smacked around last week by TCU, and I would imagine was not expecting that, because I sure wasn't expecting that. I was not at all expecting that to see that sort of an effort out of BYU. So to me, that's kind of like a, who still cares, who's still dialed in and locked in and has enough pride to go out there and play a really good game. Tech being favored by 3, though, I still would have to side with. That makes sense, because I just can't in good conscience, based on the performances that we've seen from these newbies so far this year, I cannot in good conscience feel great about one of those teams, like predicting that one of those teams would win one of these games. So you've got those. I mean, Texas, Houston. Oh boy. I feel like Texas having to go play that game. I know that you could say, well, they'll look at it like sort of small potatoes and not really be all that fired up. I think the fact that it's in state almost doesn't do Houston any favors there in that game. Like, you may have Texas's attention a little bit more, because they can kind of play into like, hey, here's another team from the state. You cannot let them get anything over on you. You need to be focused and go out and drill those dudes. The other thing will be, what is the stadium going to look like? Like, we saw the Houston crowd shots from the West Virginia game the other night, not looking very good at all last Thursday. How many people are going to be showed up for this game? I get that it's Texas, so you will have more Houston fans there, but you're also, I mean, it's Texas. There have to be a bazillion Texas fans in Houston. I would imagine that stadium's going to be pretty burnt orange, and you're going to lose a lot of your home field advantage there if you are the Cougars. So that will make life a little bit more difficult. And by a little bit, I mean probably a lot more difficult. UCF, Oklahoma. I know it sounds like John Rice Plumlee is back, hopefully more back than he was for the Kansas game. That should help, but Oklahoma's definitely rolling. Oklahoma's had some time off to decompress after the Texas win. I think that probably makes them more dangerous in a game like this, more apt to take care of business, because they've had time to just separate themselves from the total high that was winning Red River. I think that is working against UCF there. And I've seen nothing out of UCF so far that would indicate to me that they are capable of pulling off any sort of an upset like this, even if I still do have a bit of skepticism on OU. And I know that's another one that will get fans rolling their eyes at me, but dude, I don't know. I still think Texas is a better team. I realize Oklahoma won that game. I still think Texas is a better team. I think Texas would win a rematch. Dillon Gabriel definitely showed me something in the clutch with the way he drove the team down the field and won there. But I mean, he's not an elite quarterback. I think he's a very good quarterback. I don't think he's elite. I don't think he's, this comparison won't work as well after his last game, but I don't think he's Caleb Williams. And while the defense is better for Oklahoma, I'm not sure that it's like at championship caliber levels yet. So Oklahoma deserves the shine that they're getting for right now. But I guess long term, I'm not quite as bullish as it seems like some or perhaps many are. I saw, I think, was it the FPI? I feel like it was ESPN's metrics had Oklahoma is the most likely team to make the playoff in the country this year, which may just be a byproduct of the top being a little bit down right now. But still, that was kind of jarring to see. Either way, hard to see them having too difficult of a time with UCF coming up this weekend. That game's at 11 o'clock on ABC, by the way. We've got two more here. Oklahoma State, West Virginia, man, that line is very intriguing to me. West Virginia, 3.5-point favorite at home with how well Oklahoma State has been playing here. But I have to think so much of that is just about the scenario. The scenario here is that you've got West Virginia returning home off of a devastating loss, but a loss that you would figure probably refuels them, motivates them. If it doesn't, I think it could go very, very south the other way very fast if they're going to let that control their emotions and control their season here. And for Oklahoma State, you're coming off of a real high. Crazy to say that in 2023, beating Kansas is a real high, but it absolutely is. That was a hell of a win from Oklahoma State, just like it was to beat K-State up the way that they did. Not just win, but really dominate the game against K-State. So in the situational spot, I think like if you're following typical college football tropes, this would definitely be the spot where Oklahoma State's going to have a bit of a letdown, and West Virginia would be back up playing at home, looking to really be motivated after their loss and the way that they lost against Houston. So I don't know. I'll be honest. My gut is to say Oklahoma State there, but I understand the case that is being made for West Virginia. I think Oklahoma State is a better football team. I think they have a better collection of talent on that team, but that doesn't always mean that they're going to pull out the victory. And then, of course, you've got Big 12 championship game rematch, TCU and K-State. Hard to know exactly what to think of TCU now with Chandler Morris out for a month. Josh Hoover coming in, slinging the rock around with 400-plus yards in his first start last week, which was crazy. And then K-State switching quarterbacks much the same way, using Avery Johnson and his legs to get a win. What does it look like now that TCU has a week to actually game plan for him and gear everything they're doing around stopping him? I think that will be a fascinating element of this matchup. And when you have two basically new freshman quarterbacks going at it, which I'm sure Will Howard is going to play some, but I would imagine Avery Johnson probably starts. K-State didn't tip their hand on that this week at the press conferences. I would imagine that he probably starts. But either way, with all of that going on, it feels like a combustible game. Like that could blow up in somebody's face rather quickly. The line is K-State minus 6.5. I was asked for one prediction earlier this week with something I do, and I said K-State by a touchdown, but I can tell you I don't think I would touch that with a 10-foot pole if I were somebody that was just neutral and betting on games. That does not feel like a great one to me. I don't know that I have a great read on what's going to happen with TCU and K-State at home in Manhattan. I kind of just give K-State the edge because they're going to be at home. They're going to be at home. You've got a redshirt freshman quarterback making his second career start and his first road start. So you would think that could intimidate him a bit, and you would be able to get after him. Okay, let's get to a couple of donations here. And you've got 5 to 10 minutes, I would say, here. If you want to get something in, it's buzzer beater time. So click the $ below the chat box if you want your chat to be read. With almost 350 people in here, obviously I can't keep up with everything going on in the chat. So if you want to be a part of it tonight, click the $ below the chat box to attach a donation to your chat. Makes it a super chat and puts it in a separate column for me. And that is much appreciated as always. Also, like the video if you can. Like the video. I would really appreciate that. Totally free. Just one click. Like the video. Leave a comment under the video. All of that helps with the YouTube algorithm. And you can contribute on Venmo. It is John-Kurtz-4 if you would like to do that. Delarick. What's up, Delarick? Delarick says, based on schedule and the way it will work out, Iowa, I believe, will have the third best conference record. Not guaranteed. And Houston has best chance at bowl. Okay, so Iowa State, I'm assuming will have the third best conference record. Boy, I guess I'm going to have to pull up the clone schedule. I don't know, man. Don't know about that. You can call me a biased observer here, but it's hard to shake what they were looking like against Iowa and Ohio and Oklahoma, where they were not very competitive beyond like the first quarter of that game. TCU's a nice win at Cincinnati. I think is fine. Like certainly winning by 20, you're more than taking care of business there. But I'm going to need to see more from Iowa State. That, and Oklahoma State, the Oklahoma State win has aged well. I guess. Look, I see it. I mean, I see why Iowa State is getting a decent amount of respect, and they should, especially based on relative to the rest of the league here. We'll see how it carries out. They've still got KU, Texas, and K-State left on the schedule, and a road trip to BYU also. Maybe less daunting now with how much all the newcomers have struggled. Game at Baylor next week off a bye week. They should be able to win that. They should be able to handle that. But I mean, Kansas and Ames is going to be really tough. At BYU should be tough. Texas at home is going to be really tough. At K-State is going to be really tough. I just can't see them finishing with the third best record. Now, do I think that they're 7-5? Probably. Yeah. I mean, can they go 3-2 across that schedule? Baylor, Kansas, at BYU, Texas, at K-State. yeah, I think they could probably go 3-2 and finish 7-5. And that would be, by the way, just one hell of a season for Matt Campbell based on the gambling scandal, like everything that they've had to deal with this year. Are you kidding me? Like, yeah, that would be a phenomenal season for the boys and Ames. So that's what I have to say there. And Houston, best chance at a bowl. Boy, these are hot takes, Delarick. These are hot takes. I don't on the surface, I don't agree with either of them, but I'm try to treat these with respect and be fair. So I will bring it up. They need 3 more wins. Houston is not going to get one this weekend against Texas. I would love it if they did, but I don't think that's going to happen. Then Houston's got to go to K-State. So, I mean, you're looking at 2 losses there. It is more manageable from there on out. 3 of the last 4 against Baylor, Cincinnati, and UCF. But 2 of those are on the road, and then there's a home game with Oklahoma State squeezed in there too. I have a hard time seeing them get that done. I don't know where 3 wins are coming there. They could certainly beat Cincinnati at home. I'd get them to 4, and then I'd give them maybe 1 of 2 out of Baylor and UCF, and I don't think they're getting Oklahoma State. So I have a hard time seeing it. I'll be honest, I do. You guys know, like I've been pretty partial to BYU so far this year. I'm still like leaning more toward like BYU being the best chance there just because of what I think of their team. Alpha Cat, what's up, Alpha Cat? Alpha Cat, never leave out the state when talking about ISU. And I don't want to stand too close to Bill Self. They might call a foul. Porter Mosier. That was a great moment from Big 12 Media Day. Porter Mosier was next to Bill Self and the line of coaches as they're all getting their picture taken. And he said, I don't want to stand too close to Bill. They might call a foul. But then Bill, in typical affable fashion, apparently said, well, only at home, and played into the joke, which is pretty great. And like, I mean, you can say what you will about Bill Self. And look, I am not a fan of the University of Kansas. I am not a fan of the University of Kansas basketball, but it's hard to really like hate Bill Self. He is a pretty likable, affable, charismatic guy. And in moments like that, like I do think he really shines, like playing into the joke there. So kudos to Porter Mosier for the dig. I mean, look, I'm not taking anything away from Porter Mosier on that. I like that. I'm here for any sort of Kansas dig about the officiating at Allen Fieldhouse. But yeah, anyway, I felt like that was a pretty good moment from all the coaches there. There were some good moments, man. I mean, you had Jerome Tang showing up in the Coach Prime glasses that he got from Coach Prime when he met with him recently to talk about some branding. Obviously, you know that I love that. Let's see. Jim, just a simple, great coverage, John. Thank you, Jim. I much appreciate your support of the channel, my friend. And thank you for being here. Thank you. Delarick wants to follow up. Delarick says, I was counting Iowa State with 2 losses and still third best. Okay, Delarick, I gotta bring it up here, man. Alpha Cat's telling you never leave out the state when talking about ISU. Just passing that along. 2 losses and still third best. Okay. So you're saying for right now, you would still classify Iowa State as the third best team, maybe not necessarily at the end of the year. Okay, that's fair. Like if we're doing it based on merits, wins over TCU and Oklahoma State, and then a 20-point road win over one of the newcomers, based on merit, I can get behind that. I can definitely get behind that for Iowa State being there right now. Just consider me skeptical about where that goes at the end of the year. But if you are following along and you're trying to say like, well, where's the consistency here, John? Because you talk about any of these teams and you'll talk yourself into, I just don't buy them being the third best team in the league. You're right. I don't think I buy a single one, but somebody has to be, and eventually somebody will figure that out. KU, K-State, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, West Virginia. I don't feel confident in saying any one of those like definitively is the third best team, and TCU if you want to lump them into that group. I just don't. But by default, somebody is going to do it this year. Somebody will do it. Alpha Cat is cracking me up, man. Alpha Cat is cracking me up here. Iowa State, Delarick and Alpha Cat. You guys are going to have to duke it out in the comments, man. You guys are going to have to duke it out there. Alpha Cat wants the state included in Iowa State. So I'm just putting it out there, Delarick. You can take that, you can throw it right back, or you can take it and do whatever it is that you want with it. Doesn't matter to me. But I'm just leaving that on your doorstep, my friend. Daniel, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for being here. Cat Fan in Huskerland, a.k.a. Daniel Osborne. Great show, John. Go Cats. Short and simple, short and sweet, but I appreciate it. Daniel, my friend, as always. Go Cats, indeed. You guys are going to have to try to keep me updated on the game. Actually, this may be like the most, I was going to say naked. I probably shouldn't be saying that on the internet, but you'll understand what I mean. Like, I don't think I will have like any access to figure out what is going on in the K-State game on Saturday, because I will be at When We Were Young, the music festival in Vegas. And everything I've read is saying, like, don't expect to get any cell service there at all. So I'll be there until probably like 10, 11 o'clock at night. Guess I won't have cell service. Guess I won't have any idea what is happening in the football game. And it will just be a surprise to me. I will say, I think I will be back in time to do a show because my flight is like very early in the afternoon. So I think I will be back in time as long as I can get a crash course on everything that happened over the weekend. We can still come and talk about it. But you guys, the point is, you guys better bring the hot takes. You guys better bring the hot takes on Sunday, because I may be a little short on the takes myself. So this is actually, I'm glad that I'm thinking of this. This is a challenge to all of you, the listener, the viewer. You need to bring your hot takes on Sunday. Bring them scorching, keep them refrigerated, and then microwave them before the show on Sunday night to help me out and help us all through this. Okay. That's what I need from you. It's a pretty simple ask. I don't ask much of you. I guess I do ask you to like videos and, share them and all that, but I'm asking one more thing of you. Okay. Bring it strong on Sunday. Bring it very strong on Sunday. Nolan, what's going on, Nolan? Appreciate you, Nolan. Nolan says BYU will always be dangerous at home, even on a down year. Don't overlook a game at Lavelle Edwards Stadium. They will absolutely be bowl eligible. Hey, that is fair, because let me see, bringing up schedules here, but I saw the stat about 17-1 in the last 18 night games at home at Lavelle Edwards. And guess what time that game kicks off on Saturday with Texas Tech? It's at 6:00. So it's a night game. Do I have that right? 6:00 here? No, well, yeah, I don't know. Does that count as a night game? Because I'm seeing 6. So that'd be 6:00 Central. This is where I'm not used to the time zones thing. I guess that like basically counts as a night game. If we are going to count it, then Tech probably is in trouble there. BYU is very good at home. Very, very good at home. So I absolutely respect that. And thank you for bringing it up, Nolan. That is a valid point. Valid point. And then the rest of the way, who's BYU get at home? They got Iowa State at home. They've got Oklahoma at home after that. Texas Tech game is pretty important. Is BYU capable of winning at Texas? Probably not. Is BYU capable of winning at West Virginia? They are. Is BYU capable of winning at Oklahoma State? Maybe. But if you get Tech, you're going to be at 5 wins. I will say this, if BYU wins this weekend, I think they will be bowl eligible. I think they would find a way. They're not going to lose the last 5. But I'm not sure that I would pinpoint one of those other games and be like, oh, they're winning this one. I would just say they're good enough to figure out a way to win one of those. But you definitely, got to get Keaton Slovis back on track. I know he's really left a lot to be desired for me lately. And I'm a guy that I'm a Keaton Slovis fan, man. I wanted to ride for Keaton Slovis this year. I was really enjoying watching some of him early on in the season. And now it seems like every time I flip it on, he's throwing a pick 6. So get Keaton Slovis back on track. That could definitely help. But Nolan, I hear you. Thank you for representing BYU here on the show tonight. It's a very fair and valid point. Hope I didn't miss anything from you guys. Now is definitely buzzer beater time. If you're going to click the $ below that chat box, because we are wrapping up here unless somebody does have a crazy buzzer beater. But I will remind you, as I do each and every time that I step away here, if you could please share this channel, share the video, whether it's on social media, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, wherever it is that you're on social media. Post the video, tell people about the channel, and just word of mouth. If you have friends, family who are Big 12 fans of your school, let them know about everything that's happening here on the channel. I would really appreciate that. Let's continue to grow this and continue to have more really, really fun live chats like we did here tonight. So like the video on your way out the door, leave a comment underneath the video. That always really helps too. even if it's just to say comment, even if it's something snarky, even if it's to tell me that you hate me, you hate a take that I have, even if it's to tell Delarick to make sure and include the state and Iowa State, whatever it is, leaving a comment definitely helps me there as well. So I would much appreciate that. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you want to support the channel and you didn't catch this live. Another easy way to do that there. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday night. I've got the next 2 days off of actual work, but I will be at a golf tournament recording some podcasts with K-State athletes and coaches tomorrow in Manhattan. So if you're an EMA or a 3MA listener, make sure to look forward to that. Otherwise, I will talk to you guys here on this channel. I plan to on Sunday, unless something happens with the flight. Maybe I should have led with the fact that I'm flying Spirit. So hold on to your butts as far as that goes. But I'll keep you guys updated if something happens there. Take care, and I will talk to you soon.